The order is already moving before anyone sees it. It exists first as a sequence of words arranged to remove doubt. Typed, copied, stamped, transmitted. Its language is narrow and exact, designed to travel without distortion. Each clause is closed. Each instruction is complete. There is nothing to add and nothing to interpret. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It proceeds. It arrives in places built to receive it. Rooms where nothing is said unless required. Desks cleared of personal items. Walls that hold maps but reveal no preference. The order is read once, then read again. Not for understanding, but for verification. Numbers align. Times match. Roots are consistent. The structure accepts it as valid. No one asks why it was written this way. That question is outside its function. The system is trained to confirm authenticity, not intention. Signatures are checked, codes verified, transmission logs updated. The order moves downward exactly as designed, passing through hands that are practiced in letting it pass through them. Its progress is steady and unemotional. There is no urgency in its movement because urgency would imply uncertainty. Instead, it advances with the confidence of routine. It fits into schedules already prepared to receive it. Adjustments are made elsewhere to accommodate its requirements, not to challenge them. The order replaces silence with obligation. It removes alternatives by defining a single path forward. Every section it reaches becomes quieter, not louder. The act of receiving it closes discussion before discussion can form. There is relief in its clarity. Ambiguity has been eliminated. Those who acknowledge it do so with the same gestures used for countless others. A nod, a mark on paper, a brief verbal confirmation that carries no emphasis. The system does not reward hesitation and it does not punish speed. It rewards correctness. The order provides that. There are details within it that will matter later, though no one identifies them as such. Measurements, timings, assumptions stated as facts. These elements are not questioned because they are presented as settled. The order does not request verification. It presumes it has already occurred somewhere above. As it moves, it generates activity without debate. Preparations begin in parallel, not because of anticipation, but because alignment is required. Equipment is checked against lists that match the order precisely. Movement schedules are synchronized to times that leave no margin. Every action is framed as execution, not decision. The order does not describe consequences. It does not need to. Its authority is sufficient. It has passed through all necessary filters to exist in this form. To question it now would imply a failure earlier in the system, and the system does not acknowledge that possibility. By the time it reaches its final recipients, it no longer feels new. It feels established, as if it has always been in place. The language has lost any trace of origin. It is no longer someone's directive. It is simply the next step. Nothing in the environment resists it. Nothing slows it. The structure around it tightens, locking into the configuration the order requires. From this point forward, motion is no longer optional. The outcome has already been scheduled. The environment that receives the order is not dramatic. It is deliberate. There are layers to it, arranged to prevent disruption. Each layer exists to ensure continuity, not reflection. The order enters at the top already validated, already aligned with doctrine, already formatted to survive dissent. Its authority does not need reinforcement. The structure itself provides that. At each level, the order is transformed without being altered. Language becomes signal. Signal becomes task. Task becomes routine. The transition is seamless because the system was built for it. There is no space between receipt and acknowledgement. No pause long enough for friction to develop. Hierarchy ensures direction, but also containment. Information moves downward in portions, never as a whole. Each segment is given only what is required to function. The full shape of the order does not exist in any single place. It is distributed, compartmentalized, rendered harmless to thought by being incomplete everywhere. Those positioned to pass it along do not evaluate it. Their role is not to judge, but to preserve fidelity. The risk of distortion is considered greater than the risk of error. Consistency is treated as safety. The order benefits from this assumption. The structure is efficient. Messages move along established paths, carried by personnel trained to replicate tone and urgency without adding either. Communication is brief, stripped of emphasis. Questions are not prohibited, but they are unnecessary. The order has already been framed as final. Time within the system is measured differently. Deadlines are not suggestions, they are anchors. Everything else adjusts around them. If a conflict arises, the conflict is resolved by rearranging resources, not reconsidering instruction. The order does not bend. The environment bends around it. Procedures activate automatically. Forms are generated. Allocations approved. Schedules rewritten to match the new priority. None of this feels exceptional. The machinery of command has rehearsed this sequence repeatedly. What matters is not what the order demands, but that it demands it clearly. There are individuals who notice discrepancies. They register them the way one notices a misaligned line on a document. It is observed, not pursued. The structure does not provide a mechanism for escalation without certainty, and certainty requires permission. Permission has not been granted. Authority here is impersonal. It does not raise its voice. It does not threaten. It is embedded in protocol, in precedent, in the understanding that deviation introduces risk the system cannot quantify. Obedience is not framed as loyalty, but as professionalism. As the order descends, it accelerates. Each level strips away context until only instruction remains. The lower it goes, the narrower it becomes. Flexibility is lost by design. The system values predictability over responsiveness, because predictability can be managed. By the time the order reaches the lowest operational layers, it arrives as an absolute, not because it is perfect, but because nothing above it has allowed imperfection to exist. The structure has done its work. From this point forward, there is no command to reconsider, only commands to comply. Execution begins without announcement. There is no moment where the order is declared active. It simply enters the schedule and replaces what was there before. Timetables are revised quietly. Movements are reassigned. What had been planned is overwritten, not debated. The system does not mark this as a change, only as an update. Compliance unfolds through coordination rather than force. Each unit performs its assigned function exactly as prescribed, not because of pressure, but because the sequence depends on it. Timing is precise. Actions are synchronized to external markers that leave no room for interpretation. When the moment arrives, it is recognized by clocks, not by voices. Communication is minimal. Signals are exchanged according to protocol, their meaning fixed in advance. No additional information is offered because none is required. Each signal confirms only that the previous step has been completed. The absence of deviation is treated as confirmation of success. Movements begin along routes already cleared by paperwork. Paths are followed because they exist on the plan. Alternatives are not considered because they are not listed. The order specifies direction, duration, and condition. Anything outside those parameters does not enter the process. There is discipline in the repetition. Identical actions occur in different places at the same time, carried out by individuals who will never meet. The system does not require awareness of the whole. It requires only precision in the part. Each segment trusts the others implicitly because the order has aligned them. Adjustments are not made, even when minor irregularities appear. Delays are absorbed by compressing later actions. Variations in conditions are ignored if they fall outside predefined thresholds. The order does not include language for modification, and so none is attempted. Silence accompanies the execution, not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of routine. Commands are acknowledged once, then carried out. There are no confirmations beyond what protocol demands. To request clarification would introduce latency, and latency is treated as risk. As the process continues, momentum builds. Each completed action locks the next into place. The sequence becomes irreversible not because it is guarded, but because it is progressing. Stopping would require a new order, and no such order exists. Those involved do not perceive themselves as participants in a single event. They are executing tasks. Each task is familiar, The novelty lies only in their alignment, not in their nature. The system has trained them for this exact form of obedience. By the time the execution reaches full motion, the order no longer feels external. It has been internalized by the structure. Compliance is no longer an action. It is a state. The system is now moving exactly as instructed. The first indications do not arrive as alarms. They appear as minor discrepancies, recorded and set aside. A delay measured in minutes attributed to routine congestion. A signal received slightly out of sequence, corrected without comment. A report that does not align perfectly with expectation, filed for later reconciliation. None of these elements are interpreted as warnings. The order does not include language for interpretation. The system continues to move forward because forward motion is the only defined response. Each deviation is treated as local, temporary, and correctable within existing parameters. No single irregularity is large enough to justify interruption. Taken together, they form a pattern, but the system is not designed to assemble patterns at this level. Communication remains procedural. Messages confirm actions already taken, not conditions emerging. The structure favors confirmation over inquiry. To question would require redefining the situation, and the situation has already been defined by the order. As conditions shift, the order remains static. It does not adapt because adaptation was not authorized. Timings that once aligned now compress against one another. Margins disappear. Contingencies, if they exist elsewhere, in documents not currently active. The order in motion supersedes them. Personnel encounter circumstances not explicitly addressed. The response is uniform. Continue. The order specifies direction, not environment. When reality diverges, reality is treated as noise. The system has been trained to filter noise. There are moments where the cost of continuation becomes visible. Resources are expended faster than anticipated. Coordination requires increased effort to maintain synchronization. The structure compensates by accelerating certain processes and ignoring others. This is not improvisation. It is reallocation within fixed limits. Attempts to report anomalies move upward, but they are reframed as status updates. Language is adjusted to fit expectations. Uncertainty is translated into neutral terminology. By the time information reaches a level capable of synthesis, it has been stripped of urgency. The order's authority remains intact. It is not questioned because it has not been contradicted. No single report states failure. No message contains refusal. The absence of explicit contradiction is interpreted as validation. As execution continues, the environment grows less predictable. External factors assert themselves without regard for schedules. The system responds by tightening control, enforcing adherence more strictly. Deviations are corrected more aggressively. Flexibility is reduced further, not increased. The flaw within the order does not announce itself. It expresses itself through accumulation. Each minor adjustment made to preserve compliance increases strain elsewhere. The system absorbs this strain silently, reallocating effort without reconsideration. There is a point where continuation requires actions that no longer align with original assumptions. Those assumptions remain embedded in the order, unchanged. The system does not revise assumptions mid-execution. To do so would imply that the order was incomplete. Confusion begins to surface, but it is contained. It appears in pauses between actions, in confirmations delayed by seconds longer than acceptable, in reports that require additional clarification. These signals are noted, but they do not alter behavior. The order remains the reference point. Reality is measured against it, not the other way around. When discrepancies widen, they are attributed to execution variance, not directive error. Corrective measures target performance, not instruction. By the time the system recognizes that outcomes are diverging from expectations, the process is too advanced to halt. The mechanisms required to stop no longer exist within the active framework. All authority is committed forward. The flaw has moved from abstraction to condition. The order continues unchanged, carrying the system with it, as the consequences it did not account for become unavoidable. The collapse does not arrive all at once. It unfolds as a widening gap between what the system is still attempting to do and what the environment will now allow. Actions continue according to schedule, but their effects no longer align with purpose. Movements complete without producing the intended result. Signals confirm execution, yet outcomes fail to materialize. The structure responds by intensifying compliance. Procedures are enforced with greater precision, as if exactness might compensate for misalignment. Timelines are compressed further. Redundancies are eliminated. What remains is a narrow channel of action that permits no deviation. Loss begins to register not as shock but as accounting. Assets are marked unavailable. Units fail to report back within expected intervals. Gaps appear in coordination where continuity was assumed. These absences are noted without interpretation. The order does not provide language for reversal. Attempts to stabilize the situation focus on preserving form rather than function. The sequence must be completed because it has been initiated. Stopping would require acknowledgement of failure, and acknowledgement would require authority not currently assigned. The system continues forward because it cannot define an alternative. Scale becomes apparent gradually. What was once considered isolated now repeats across the structure. The same corrective measures are applied everywhere, producing the same results. The pattern is recognized only after it has become universal. Communication narrows further. Messages reduced to confirmations of status, stripped of context. Reports are shorter, less descriptive. There is an effort to maintain clarity by removing anything that might complicate interpretation. The effect is silence. The collapse is not chaotic. It is organized. Processes fail in sequence, not simultaneously. Each failure triggers the next stage without interrupting the overall motion. The system degrades according to its own logic. No individual action stands out as decisive. There is no single moment of error. The damage accumulates through adherence. Each correct action contributes incrementally to an outcome no longer controllable. The environment asserts itself fully now. Constraints that were once theoretical become absolute. Resources cannot be replenished at the required rate. Coordination cannot be restored within the existing framework. The system responds by narrowing objectives, redefining success as continuation rather than completion. Loss is no longer abstract. It is measured in absence, in areas that no longer respond, in tasks reassigned and never completed. The structure absorbs this information without pause. There is no designated point for reflection. By the time the final stages of execution occur, the outcome is evident, though unspoken. The order has achieved full compliance and complete failure simultaneously. Everything that could be done according to instruction has been done. What remains is not resolution, but residue. The system has carried the order to its conclusion, and in doing so has exhausted its capacity to prevent what follows. The collapse finishes quietly, not with an ending, but with a cessation of meaningful action. Afterward, the system closes around the absence. There is no formal moment that marks the end, no declaration that the order has failed. Activity diminishes not because it is stopped, but because there is less left to activate. Reports arrive later, then stop arriving at all. Logs are completed with neutral language. Status fields are left blank or marked pending, then archived. The order is no longer referenced, not because it is forbidden, but because it is no longer operational. New instructions begin to circulate, unrelated, formatted the same way, moving through the same channels. The structure does not pause between them. It was not designed to. Records are adjusted to reflect continuity. Losses are redistributed across categories that dilute their significance. Numbers are reconciled in ways that allow the system to remain coherent. What cannot be reconciled is omitted. What cannot be omitted is generalized. There is no inquiry that penetrates the structure deeply enough to isolate responsibility. The order passed through too many hands, too many layers, too many procedures. Accountability diffuses as it rises. By the time questions could be asked, there is nothing discrete to point to, only process. Personnel are reassigned. Equipment is repurposed. Schedules are rewritten. The environment changes, but the mechanisms remain intact. The same pathways that carried the failed order now carry others. Their efficiency is undiminished. Language adjusts subtly. Terms once used precisely become broader, less specific. Descriptions favor outcome-neutral phrasing. The absence of detail is interpreted as professionalism. Silence becomes a form of closure. There are individuals who remember fragments, but memory has no standing within the structure. It cannot be logged, cannot be transmitted through official channels. What remains unofficial does not propagate. The system does not learn in the way an observer might expect. It does not reinterpret the past. It refines procedure at the margins, not the core. Forms are updated, timings adjusted slightly. The underlying assumption remains. Orders are to be executed as written. Eventually, the failed order exists only as a reference number in an archive. It is complete, closed, and inactive. Its consequences persist outside the system, but the system does not track consequence beyond its operational boundary. Another order is already moving. Its language is precise, its authority unquestioned. It enters the same structure, travels the same paths, and is received with the same confidence. Nothing in the system indicates that this will be different.